do you build a culture that embraces innovation, is not afraid of disruption? And what's really crazy is that how much has changed over the last 20 years. You know, it was April of 1998 that Netflix began. And like the minister was saying, we started by mailing DVDs. But even more so, 20 years ago, no one had a smartphone. There was only 50% of the people in the United States had even a cell phone. There was 1/3 less people in the United States. Even better, a house cost about 60% less. It was just a different world, and the rate of change is accelerating. You know, it used to be that you could kind of take a year to decide your future and what you were going to do in business. And today, it's almost every month you have to be thinking, what is happening? And one of the primary reasons for this is how easy it is to start a company these days. If you look at this slide and how dense this last part is, this slide shows that a couple years ago, every single week, a new company became valued at over $1 billion. Every single week. And in these years, in these last 4 or 5 years, every year, $50 billion is invested in startups just in the United States. Half of that coming out of Silicon Valley. It was, you know, it was just a few years ago, 2 guys were living in San Francisco. They had a 1-bedroom apartment. They couldn't pay their rent, and they thought, geez, you know, how do we pay our rent? We can't rent another room, we just have 1 room. They went out and bought some air mattresses at Walmart, blew them up, rented them for $10 a night, and now that's Airbnb. A few years before that, a guy, Travis Kalanick, was in Paris. He was with his friend. They couldn't find a taxi. And he said, wouldn't it be great if I could just pull out a phone and a car would show up? Ideas today can start companies. You no longer need huge amounts of capital. You no longer need offices or servers or all the different things that it used to take to build a business. And for all of us who run companies, that should not only excite us, but it should scare us. And these are the reasons why innovation and culture, the culture that builds that, I find so important. Now, you know, Netflix was really just, you know, 3 of us who thought, boy, I hate paying Blockbuster late fees. It was like, why do you have to return the movie so quick? And we would actually, you know, get late fees. I remember one time finding a VHS cassette under the seat of my car that I swore I returned. I knew I returned it, and I think it was $50 or $60. It was horrible, but more important, we were film lovers, and we thought, you know, you walk into a Blockbuster and there's a limited selection. We want to see documentaries and foreign films, and we wanted to see, you know, silent films even. And so we wanted to build a library that had every single title. But this was before really a broadband. Just to give you a sense of how long ago it was, Amazon was only 3 years old, and Amazon promoted their service on the radio. Not the internet, on the radio. And I remember their ad was, we have so many books that it would fill the Queen Mary, which happened to be docked at Long Beach at the time. And no one could imagine, boy, that's a lot of books. You know, that's more books. And of course, look at them today. Actually, we thought the most sophisticated thing would be to automate all the millions of DVDs we were sending every day. You know what? It turned out people were a lot better at picking discs and putting them in envelopes. And so we grew that business, And we really started thinking, like, how do you evolve when you know that your business is going to be obsolete in not too long of a time? In 1998, there was no such thing as streaming, no such thing as downloading. There was no video on the internet. It was all, you know, there wasn't even those annoying pop-up ads that used to drive everybody crazy. But we knew that eventually the internet would be there and have the ability to deliver video. So in 1998, we thought, okay, what do we call this company? And we, like many people, we hired companies we spent lots of money telling us what it should be called. In those days, the most popular names were fruit. You know, Apple was so popular, we thought, okay, guava, or you know, banana. And then the next big level of recommendations were the combinations of Greek gods and fruit. And then one day we thought, you know what? We're going to be on the internet. Flix is kind of another way to say movies. And so we came up with the name Netflix, but of course, many years before we started streaming. The funniest part was, and this is how I think you know when you're disrupting or you're doing something innovative, it's when everybody says there is no way that business is going to work. I came home, you know, the three of us were sitting in a cafe and we were talking, oh, wouldn't it be great if you could just open your mailbox and a movie would show up? Wouldn't that be fantastic? And I went home all excited, and my kids were there, and my wife was there, and I said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to mail DVDs to people's homes. And she said, that is the stupidest idea I have ever heard. And so now that's my gauge, is like, every time I have an idea, I ask if it's a good idea, I don't do it. Don't tell her I said that, because she gives me all the good ideas. But no one believed, and we thought, how do we build this culture? So what we realized, you know, and this was during the dot-com you know, bubble, where you could walk into any investment house. There was a guy, there was a guy who came into an investment meeting just before us, and he walked out and he had this big smile on his face, and we asked him why, and he said, I just got $5 million for my business. And we asked him what it was, and he said, I am going to sell sock puppets on the internet. You know the sock puppets where you have a little face, you get a medias and, you know, do a little face on it, and he said, I've got $5 million, that's great. They turned us down, that company. But the culture we were able to build there was one that empowered people. We would work really hard to hire the best and then give them all the authority to make decisions. Famously, Netflix is known for having the unlimited vacation policy, which is, you know what, you don't have to come to work. Just do your job and wherever you want to do it, and if you don't perform, then we're going to fire you. But do it wherever you want. Of course, no one took any vacation time. So it actually worked out really good. But one of the things we did is we realized you have to stay close to your customer. And while we were mailing these DVDs, the problem is that it took 3 days in most parts of the country. And we overheard one time a customer out of a focus group say, you know what? When I asked for the DVD to be mailed, I was in the mood for a comedy. By the time I got it, I wanted something different. And from that point on, we realized the speed of delivery was the most important thing we could do. And we would focus every bit of our energy on that. But before we did, before we got to streaming, we tried a couple other crazy ideas. The first idea was, let's build some kiosks and put them in grocery stores. So now you can return your DVD at a grocery store, pick up a new one. Another idea was instead of the return address on the envelope being our warehouse, we would put the address of the next customer who wanted that movie. And the last one, of course, was the one that actually worked, which is kind of the no-brainer, is why not build mini warehouses all over the country and put everybody in one-day ship? So by the time we did that, the company took off and started, going crazy. Streaming, of course, ended up being the ultimate kind of solution to the fastest delivery. And we launched that in 2008. It was 10 years after we launched the business that streaming first began. And then the business just started becoming a household word. I don't know if you have this in Spanish, but the expression in the US is Netflix and chill. And which is essentially, hey, it's like a dating line. Hey, do you want to Netflix and chill? And when you have a company name that becomes a verb, that's when you know you really made it. So the company started taking off. But the thing that always amazed me is, what did the competition do? We at one time invited the executives of Blockbuster, who at the time were doing about $5 billion a year in revenue. We invited them to come meet us because we were actually still desperate. We weren't growing as fast as we wanted. We thought Blockbuster would be a good partner. We invited them up. We showed them our warehouse, that mailing facility you saw, and they laughed. They said, you know what? This is crazy. We could do better than this, and if it's such a good idea, we'll do it later. We actually offered them 50% of the company for $50 million. We thought it was a good round number, 50%. And they said, no way, we're not going to do that. Well, today, Netflix is worth $150 billion. And so I think, and of course, where Blockbuster is. They're not around. It's the, and I hate to be mean, but the thing that is the difference is Blockbuster was afraid to innovate. They were afraid to think that maybe their business wouldn't last forever. And so many businesses do that. They spend so much time protecting their existing revenue that they don't kind of think more about the future. And the minister was actually just perfectly correct that from the very beginning, Netflix knew it had to disrupt itself by streaming. By the way, the movies by mail service, which was the name we were going to call the company, you can imagine how successful that would have been, that still makes over $500 million in profit, still. And so business DVD still is actually very big. One of the big changes over the last few years is exclusive content. When we started Netflix, we wanted to have everything, like I said, foreign films and documentaries, but we soon realized that exclusive content is what keeps people coming back. So as the company evolved, it realized it needed to change. And these are just some of the titles. Now, I was just at the Netflix headquarters in Los Angeles 2 weeks ago, and now it is a full-blown studio. There are people coming in with suitcases to film movies. There's sets and everything. It's I think this year they're going to spend $8 billion on content alone, and you'll see all kinds of great series out there. The philosophy now of Netflix is we're going to make every piece of content imaginable and let you pick what you like. And in fact, they're going to almost every country in the world and helping to support the local film community. And then you decide what you like. Their competition, like HBO, believes in curating and deciding what you want to watch or what they want you to watch. So a big difference in the philosophy. Now, knowing your customer, like knowing what your customer wants is super important. And it always surprises me how some companies and industries don't do that. As executives, we have to spend time with our customers and understand exactly how they use the product. And the good news is everybody loves entertainment, so this is a lot easier than others. But what always amazed me is how when you have a cable, if you use cable or you use linear television, and you get to the end of a series, you have to see the next episode, you have to stop, back, search, play. Why? They obviously don't use their product. Why not just have the next episode start automatically? It's so simple. But when you don't use the product yourself, you don't make these changes. And I remember asking a Comcast, a cable executive in the US, and he was surprised. I don't think he ever used his product. But what's even better, now, why have to listen to all the credits when it starts? Skip the intro. All these things are very simple, and they make for an amazing kind of experience and product. Now, of course, the success is in the numbers. It's now in over 130 countries, well over 100 million subscribers. And it reminds me, back when in 2002, when finally the business started taking off, we used to make bets like, how big could the company get? And we, at the time, I remember I bet 1.7 million subscribers. To me, that was like, if we could get to 1.7 million subscribers, that would be the best thing in the world. And of course, it continues to show I don't know how to forecast. Now, really what made this all work is the combination of people and culture and clear objectives and leadership, especially focus. And people are such an important thing. So often you have to work hard at getting diversity amongst your employees. You have to make sure that you work hard to ensure that women are represented at the very highest level. And you do that because it's great for business. They understand half of your customer base. You have to have a real representation. And more important, you don't want any assholes. I don't know if that translates, but we always used to have this no asshole policy. And now, how do you identify one? That's the tough part. But you know it when you see it. Someone who creates a work environment that becomes toxic, and it's just a place where people don't want to go to work. They don't respect people, they don't treat people, and we found by very quickly firing or getting rid of people who weren't respectful and weren't part of the team, we helped the culture. Also, you need to make it fun and exciting and challenging and have big rewards. It becomes incredibly important to be motivated and to really think after working at the company, you're going to be more employable and earn more money as a result of your experience. And it's important for companies to invest in people. And I think events like this that CMPC is doing is exactly what I'm talking about. They're investing in their customers and in their partners and vendors, and these are the kind of companies that succeed and grow and stay relevant for years and years. You also have to have clear objectives. Having subjective measurements like, oh, you did a good job, that doesn't work because it's so, it's kind of arbitrary. You need to have clear, quantifiable measurements. When you do that, people understand, am I doing a good job, a bad job, and they don't have to guess. And it makes such a big difference in performance. Lastly, you have to have leaders that are brave enough and smart enough to know that if you hire people smarter than you only make yourself better, and you not only grow, but you become a better leader. I don't think anybody's, well, maybe some people are, but very few people are born leaders. You have to learn and work just as hard as everybody else to be good and to motivate your team. When you do all that, you can create a company that is innovative, isn't afraid of failure. And we always talk about this whole idea of failure. It is absolutely true. You learn so much more when you make a mistake or you fail. But in a fast-growing company that can't keep making mistakes, one of the things I found amazingly helpful at Netflix was if you made a mistake, you would share what happened with everybody in the company. We would have meetings like this every month where at least one person would come up on stage and say, here was my project, here is what I thought I could accomplish, here's what I did, and here is how it failed. And they were proud of what they learned. But more importantly, everybody in the audience learned how not to make that same mistake. And it allowed very fast progress where you didn't see the same mistake being made over and over again. And having that kind of trust and safety for an employee to admit those, because no one likes to say, I screwed up or things didn't work. But it ends up being an amazing way to grow and grow fast. Now, another company that I went to work for is McDonald's, and of course, big company worldwide. McDonald's in 2002 had its first declining year-over-year sales, and they were going, gosh, what do we do? We were making the same hamburgers, the same French fries, and people aren't coming back. Well, they started doing all these studies, and they couldn't figure it out. They thought, let's try everything. Maybe we should make healthier meals. And so they put out Healthy Choices menu. It looked really good on the menu, but no one ordered it. I don't know if anybody, it looks good. It's walnut salad. And you remember over the years, McDonald's had grown really big, at this point, about $30 billion in revenue. By bringing in, especially families, their mothers would bring in their young children, and they'd get the Happy Meal and have burgers and fries. But then in the early 2000s, they started bringing in young adult males, because $5 you could get in the U.S. you could get a really healthy dinner. They also had this crazy idea: why don't we rent DVDs? If we rent DVDs, you have to return them. You'll smell the burgers and fries, and hopefully you'll buy some. In fact, you probably know this, but McDonald's has these big fans that start in the kitchen and put all the air outside right where you park or where you walk in, and it's very effective. They've tested turning it off and turning it on, and you definitely keep it on all the time. So the idea was, let's build these automated vending machines where we can rent DVDs. And it actually worked. It actually increased sales by about 4% at these McDonald's. And McDonald's does about $2.5 million a year. So that was like an extra 100,000 in revenue each year. So we grew that business to over 40,000 locations. It still does $2 billion a year in revenue. But unfortunately, what happened for me is in 2011, a lot of executives at McDonald's were saying, our founder, Ray Kroc, he's dead, would be rolling over in his grave if he knew we were renting R-rated movies at McDonald's, a family restaurant. And so I ended up leaving because R-rated movies were the most popular popular movie. It still does $2 billion a year in revenue, and is still, a very big business. By the way, McDonald's discovered about 5 years later the reason that the business had started declining is those young adult males wouldn't keep the bathrooms clean. And when the mothers with young children would come to McDonald's and see the bathrooms like that, they stopped bringing their children to the restaurant. All McDonald's had to do was clean the bathrooms. They didn't have to launch this DVD business. They didn't need the healthy choices. All they needed to do was go into the bathrooms and see what the problem was. They cleaned up the bathrooms, and the business took off. It's now over a $55 billion a year business with no additional restaurants. Some of these things are just right in front of your face, and you don't realize it. But they responded, unlike Blockbuster did. Again, the company succeeded because we had a great culture. By the way, we got sued by 3 studios. Warner, Fox, and Universal decided that Redbox was destroying the value or the perceived value of movies. Why? Because we were renting movies for $1 a night while Blockbuster was charging $4 a night. And everybody said, you can't do that. You can't lower the price. That's kind of destroying the value. But we did because we used technology to get the movies where people wanted them, and we earned more money from the movies than they did. But we did that, through lots of challenges, being sued, having all kinds of, financial problems. But it was the team that kept it all together. Another business which is completely broken is the cinema business. The cinema business is in exactly the same situation as Blockbuster was 15 years ago. One of the main reasons why is that as the business declines, the cinemas keep raising prices. Their solution to a declining business is, let's just raise the price 3% every year as the business goes down. It's not thinking, geez, maybe people want something different. Maybe people want to see TV shows. I mean, wouldn't it be amazing to see Game of Thrones in the cinema, or see, the World Cup, in the theater, or do gaming? But cinemas aren't thinking like that. They just keep raising the price. And you can see the decline is everywhere. The only part of the world where there's an increase is China, and they're building a theater almost every week, but it's only because it's been underdeveloped. But in every part of the world, including the United States, it's like a -3% per year. What's even worse is the people who are declining are millennials, people who are young, who've grown up with the internet. They have all kinds of other options, and they're finding it difficult when you have constantly raising prices and all these other options. Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, playing games on the internet is all demanding people's time. And when you think about going to the movies, it's getting more and more expensive, and you have to get out of the house. And millennials who grew up with subscription, who are also very value conscious. Sometimes we don't realize that millennials who have had all these choices in their life still really think about what am I going to get the best value from? And really, when you think about entertainment, why do you have to choose one movie over another? I want everything, and then I want to decide when I want it. And that's why subscription is so good. So I decided, what, I'm not ready to retire. I got to do this one more time and make the studios really, really angry at me. They charge more than $10 a movie. In New York, it's $15. I figured, okay, I'm going to do it for $9.95, the same price as Netflix. So, you know, our kind of motto is any day, any movie. And here, let me just play this little clip.
I make films, and that way I express myself.
And when there are no more leaders to follow, we must become one.
Do you have any idea who I am?
Hey, what's up?
You are a 9-year-old girl.
Rub 2 sticks together, make 5.
So MoviePass is really Netflix for the movie theaters. You can go to a movie every day in almost all movie theaters in the United States, about 91% of the movie theaters. And it's one of those deals you go, that's crazy. You know, how could they afford that? And what we're really doing is we're trying to reinvigorate going to the movies. What it really is, this is horrible marketing, but we call it bad movie insurance. Because how many times do you go to a movie and go, boy, that was a waste of money? And so this way, in the same way, when we launched Netflix for one flat price, people started watching movies they never would have seen before. They started seeing foreign films and documentaries because there was no added cost. They could watch whatever they want, return it, not watch it, change to something else. And it gave people freedom. It liberated people from the stress of having to make a decision. And this is becoming so important in all of our businesses. Whatever we do, whenever you can reduce the anxiety of a decision, whether it's you give them too many choices and too many prices, or it's too complicated, you have to fill out forms, all those things reduce sales. And this is essentially, you know, what happens, you know, to a lot of executive boards is like, and this is what happened to Blockbuster. They essentially said, you know what, maybe they'll go away. Maybe they'll go out of business. And they hope that something magical will happen. And of course, for all of us in business, that never happens. You have to take your future in your own hands. These are companies that didn't. AMC, of course, is still the #1 theater chain, but I hope in 5 years we either own them or will change their name. And I'm especially glad that one of these companies is out of business, Trump International. And there's a few others. One of the most exciting things going on today is how kind of innovation is starting to come into kind of the transactions of what we do. And it doesn't matter whether you're on the internet, or you're a physical location, or you have a factory or warehouse. Every time you can reduce the friction of a transaction, you increase consumption. And it doesn't matter whether it's the marketing, the merchandising, the selection, the payment, the delivery, the usage after you receive it, or the reordering. All of those, every one of those components has one aspect of it that isn't needed, that you could automate. And Amazon has done an amazing job if you go to Seattle, you should definitely go see this location. You'll see more of them around the country. But in this location, you walk in, you pick up a basket, you put whatever you want to buy into the basket, and then you walk out and you put it in a bag and you leave, and you get a bill. And you don't have to talk to anybody, you don't have to deal with anybody. The only people who are there are product specialists, people who can educate you on, how what's in the product. Does this food have calories or not a lot of calories? And this is just, this is kind of an example. Like, hotels, some hotels now, like Hilton and Marriott, make it so you don't have to go and check in. The check-in is on your phone, the key is on your phone, and you just go straight to the room. Those are the kinds of things that expand consumption. The reason Uber has increased the amount of people none of us took taxi cabs like we do Uber now. And in the United States, it's having a huge impact, really good in many ways. But recently, I was in a small town in Northern California. One of my sons had a speeding ticket. So we had to go up there and talk to the judge and talk to the police there. And the police who had given him the ticket said, I'm really glad that you're coming up to pay this fine. And I asked him why. And he goes, we are getting so many fewer drunk driving tickets these days because of Uber. And, and it's just amazing the impact, both positive and negative, that some of these new businesses have. You go to airports now, Los Angeles airport, it used to take 20 minutes to find a parking place in the garage. Now it's empty. Now you can park whenever you want, and it's all because of Uber and Lyft. These businesses that remove the transactional friction, filling out paperwork, having to reorder. If you're a company that's supplying products, you already know what the customer wants and how much and when they want it. And automating that is just one more way to reduce the friction. And kind of the bottom line of all of this is all of us as executives and people running our companies and making these decisions, the worst thing you can do is to be paralyzed by not knowing whether to go right or left. And the decision to, and this kind of gets to that whole failure idea, is it's better to make the wrong decision and learn very quickly it was not correct, and then correct that, fix that mistake, than it is to wait and wait and wait and wait and move forward. And if I could leave you with anything at all, it would be brave. Make that decision and move forward. So I thank you very, very much. Thank you.